to ask questions, what you can do is write it in the chat or put up, do a raise hand, and then Helen can always ask them if you don't want to ask questions. But certainly when we get to the teacher training part, so what I would do is just give you an introduction to our Da Vinci Life Skills project, and then I'll go into the teacher training and a bit more detail about one of our projects. There we go. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. So our company is called Da Vinci Life Skills. We're based in Cambridge, and we are building a showcase model for the future of education. And our mission is to create an education system for the entrepreneurs and the world builders of the future. So we're looking at sustainable, ethical, and creative education. Excuse me. The way we started this project is to really go back to the beginning of what's education for. And if you look at our species, as a, we're one of many, many species on the planet. And if you think about education in that terms, it's like, well, what would we want to educate the young of our species? We're one of a few great apes, and it's like, well, how do we prepare our young for life on this planet? And that's kind of how we're approaching education, because it's like, let's go back to us as creatures on this planet and have a bit more connection with our whole biosphere. So humans as a species, what are we like? So we come from a tribal past. We've been evolving over hundreds of thousands of years, and that tribal past that we come from was all about communication and expression, and we really communicated with each other through storytelling, through dance, song, adornment, rituals, and rites of passage. And I mean, that's still going on in some parts of the world right now too. And but in our more modern societies, we've really come a long way from that. And maybe as we've come away and we've got this new technological world that we live in, maybe we've lost something. So the question is maybe there's a chance to look back and incorporate some of our past. Because when you look at our education system that's been basically formed in the last 100 years, certainly public education in the UK was formed around the Industrial Revolution to educate everybody to work in factories. And this what we would argue is that's not really what's needed right now, and there's lots of issues with it. There's lots of amazing things about it, and we're not talking about throwing everything out, but there are a lot of things that could be improved about it, and it hasn't really changed in a really long time. And what we're suggesting is that everything always needs to be iterated and improved on. And so how can we do that? Because if you look at this picture here on the left, I think compared to that picture of our tribal beginnings, what we've done here is put our young people into suits and put them into rectilinear boxes and given them clerical work. And is that what we want? Is that what we want for our young people? And on top of that, my experience, I'm a design technology teacher and an art teacher. I've been working in the state system, and what I've noticed from doing that is that grades seem to be the most valuable thing. So that we're really looking at the question of what do we value in education too. So at the moment it seems to be grades, so it's all about teaching to the test. And what I noticed and what research shows is that this current system of high stakes exams and teaching to the test and all this pressure on students and pressures on teachers and on schools to get these grades, to get the school on the league table and to meet all these targets is causing huge amounts of stress and anxiety and depression. I've had terrible experiences with mental health issues in my classrooms that it's just not acceptable. And this is why we're wondering whether this current education system is even ethical, particularly when you look at the statistics that a third of students are failing to achieve a grade 4 or a C above in their GCSEs. And that means that we're sending out students into the world to, a third of our students are feeling like failures. And that's quite a big rite of passage moment. And it's it's pretty shocking that we're allowing anyone to feel like a failure, particularly our young people. So our vision at Da Vinci Life Skills is to, well, actually I go back on that slide because I think that John Dewey quote is beautiful. So education isn't preparation for life, it's life itself. And I think that's an important thing to consider. We're not preparing people that they actually don't start at 18, that the whole journey of education is what's important. It's not all about this end test, that it really should be about enjoying the experience. So with all the technology and science and engineering, this incredible and rich development and knowledge that we've built up within our societies, I mean, it's amazing. And we've even taken ourselves off the planet to other planets, and we're exploring the whole universe right now. And that's incredible what we've done as a species. But our technology has also come to a point where it could destroy us. And that's a dangerous thing. So what we really want to be educating our young is how to survive on this planet, and how to create sustainable futures, and to be part of that building of a sustainable future. And maybe we could have a look back at some ancestral wisdom and connect it with that technology and engineering. So really bringing together these things. And then we might be able to create some of these biophilic sustainable futures. So what we're proposing is a biophilic education movement. Biophilia is the passionate love of life and all that's alive. And in these pictures, you can see some biophilic design. When I teach DT, biophilic design is one of the things I've been teaching. And a lot of the research that's gone into looking at biophilic design has shown that not only does it improve your physical health and your psychological well-being, but also improves your cognitive function. And that's a really profound statement, because if it's increasing your brain power to change the environment, that's massive. And so maybe schools could be designed differently for a start, and that we could have more organic spaces, that our classrooms might not need to be white boxes. Maybe we can have more natural materials, more, and it's not just really about bringing green things into the classroom, although it's great to have plants in your classroom, more outside learning, but also just changing the shape of the wall, maybe putting something in the corners, maybe adding a plant into the corners, but also bringing there's things like natural light. I know that teachers don't always have the choice of where they're teaching, but just trying to get as many natural things into your classroom as possible. When teaching biophilic design, one of the things that occurred to me was, well, what would a whole education system look like if it were biophilic? And with that thought, it's like, well, what if biophilic as a design is about finding an environment where human beings flourish? So what's our natural habitat? Where do we flourish? Then in terms of our education, it's really about nurturing a whole human being, so a human ecosystem. And we are, as a species, an integral part of our local ecosystem and global ecosystems. So a biophilic education, what could that look like? Well, when we talk about a human ecosystem, there's more than just knowledge and a few skills that we have right now. We also have imagination. Yes, some courses and some schools, we are bringing out some imagination, but it really could be a lot more. Intuition, empathy, compassion, our sense of curiosity and this sort of idea of lifelong learning, adventure and exploration. So it's not just about inspiring environments, it's can we work as a community, can we work more collaboratively and less competitively. We've been looking into agricultural schemes, so CSAs, community supported agricultural schemes, and growing food with the community, and making schools a bit more like community spaces, and really looking at high tech and low tech. So using tech in a sustainable and ethical way that's really supporting learning, rather than things like social media that are sort of using their dopamine, using students or young people's dopamine against them to make money. So our Da Vinci Life Skills curriculum, another John Dewey quote, give the pupil something to do, not something to learn, and the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking, and learning naturally results. There's been loads of research in the last 20 years in neuroscience that has shown that we don't remember things. You know, we're testing kids in a very stressful environment, and we've been teaching them dry facts. And those are two really hard things for our memory. If you look at neuroscience, it's very hard to remember dry facts, and it's very hard to remember things under stress. Your stressful situation tends to shut down your hippocampus. And so, but actually what we do remember is stories and narratives, and we're really good at remembering those. And if we remember things with our whole senses, then there's just way more chance that actually when we do sit an exam, if we've gone through project, but this is the real excitement of project-based learning, is that then you have more, you know, more chance of remembering the information that you've been working on, because you have more personal connection to it. Our figurehead is Leonardo da Vinci, because Leonardo was a polymath, and he was somebody that was accomplished at hundreds of things. I mean, loads of things. He was a scientist, mathematician, engineer, inventor, all of these things. He also did stage design, costume design, cooking. He was a geographer, painter, sculptor. And our concern is that if Da Vinci was at school now in the UK, for example, he probably wouldn't be able to be all those things. He would be probably, if he were dyslexic, he would have probably really struggled in the system, felt like a failure, and maybe got by with a few GCSEs. And it's just really depressing to think about how he would do within the system now. If he was incredible at science and was able to do exams, he would have probably been pushed down a more academic route and the EBAC route, and he may never have created the Mona Lisa and the sculptures that he did, the Last Supper, and all of these beautiful pieces of art. So what we're suggesting is that some people, and in fact most people, are interested in lots of things, and do we really need this separation between all the subjects? Could we not have a more transdisciplinary curriculum where there wasn't really a difference between science and art? And we're just curious about life. It's about that love of learning and that love of that curiosity about the world. Therefore, we have our curriculum is bringing together all of the subjects into five projects. They're 5 project pathways. They're all contextual and they're all transdisciplinary. So they all blend all of the subjects. Our 5 project pathways, we have food, which is all about world food production, and also about what can we grow. So we're really trying to make these projects interactive. So can the students cook the school lunches, for example? Could they build a cafe for the parents? Could they design the menus at least? Could they build a vegetable garden on the school premises? So all of that, but also looking at the whole of food production. So it's whether it's ethical or sustainable to be importing food from places. What are monocultures? What's fair trade? All of these questions looking at what's the stock market, what can we buy locally, what could we grow locally, what's seasonal food, as well as cookings and flavors. So we're learning with all of our senses. And then and also actually looking at the whole process of food in terms of a circular, so sort of a circular economy, in the sense that there's the waste as well, and how do we compost and bring that whole process round. Enterprise projects are about product design, company building, as well as civic projects like town planning, park design. Within this project, we're really trying to encourage the entrepreneurs of the future. So by the end of high school, I mean, even by the end of middle school, a student will have been able to build their own company if they want to. So we're really trying to encourage them to think about, what companies do we need? What products might we need? If we did product design, how do we make products inclusive and ethical and sustainable? And what types of companies could we create? So could we create a charity or an NGO? What do those words mean? And that's what we're really looking at within our enterprise projects. And our production projects more about events. So it's events management, and we have theory, and then we have the practice of whatever it might be. So we learn how to do this particular thing, and then we put on the event to showcase it. So it might be a film or a documentary or a theatre or a fashion show or a book that's created. So you might have a pop-up book on the periodic table, for example, or a science exhibition on the human body, or it might be a music album on the climate change, and there's a political album, things like this. And then you put on the event at the end so that the students learn that whole process. Our multiverse games projects are about role play. That would be tabletop role plays, so learning how to build miniatures, as well as live actions. LARPing is live action role play, where you can design costumes and whole sets, and as well as animation, so working within like Sims or Minecraft and doing animation within computer worlds. And what's really exciting about our games projects is that this is the specialism of our co-founder Zach Resnicek. He's written a book called The Teacher Gamer Handbook, and he basically feels that you could, which I always think about DT, but he thinks that you can teach the whole curriculum through gaming. And what he's doing is amazing, because the social emotional development in gaming is incredible. The potential of all the things that can be taught through games, particularly role play games, where students can create an avatar. They can not only are they creating content, but they're creating characters, and through that avatar they can play the villain or the hero in their story, and they're working in teams, and they can see how those characters affect, and that behavior affects the other people in the team. And it's a great sounding board and a chance to play out ideas, and it's really how kids learn. And we start that in primary, in reception, and then suddenly it gets taken away, and it's like, no more role play corner, no more dressing up. You've got to get on with serious work. And actually kids will dress up for years, and I know many adults that like dressing up and doing live action role play too, and it's just a wonderful way of learning. And I spoke to somebody in Cambridge that does the Dungeons and Dragons club, and he started it as an adult, and what he told me was that it's actually been an amazing thing, even as an adult, to inspire, to help build his confidence. And now he has the confidence to go out and face people and to get work and all of this, and he got that from role play games. So each of these projects, the last one is the personal exploration project, which we're going to look into a bit more in depth in these slides. The personal exploration one is really about the student getting to really look at what they're interested in. So it sits within the same framework as all of the projects, but it's about the student's curiosity and passion. And each of these projects leads to a DVQ. So I'll explain that a bit more in a moment. the important thing is that all projects, not only are they bringing in all the subjects from the national curriculum, from our normal curriculum, so we're not heading too far away from what already is. And I was just telling Helen this just now, that what we're doing is embedding all of the learning objectives. We're busy coding every single subject from the national curriculum, and we're coding all of the learning objectives so we can embed those into the projects we're doing. And then we can demonstrate a clear progress from Key Stage 1 all the way to Key Stage 5 across a whole plethora of subjects. So we could, if you look at any one of our projects, you'll be able to see what targets that we are hitting. But on top of that, what we really want to make sure we're doing is not just teaching the academic critical thinking and reasoning side, but also physical movement, practical work, social emotional development of self-management and teamwork, and also creative and intuitive thinking, so ideation and problem solving. What we are assessing and what we're teaching, as Zach and I both teachers, we want this to be very, very simple. We don't want it to be complicated for assessment or complicated for any, or for the students to work on and to assess. We're hoping that the students would be able to assess their own work. So we've created this 9 skills spiral. So what are the key skills that are horizontal skills rather than vertical skills within a domain? What are the horizontal skills that could work with all domains or most domains, and that would be a much broader preparation for life? So these are our life skills, our Da Vinci life skills, and each one of these 9 skills breaks down into 3 sub-skills. So in total we have 27 sub-skills that we are assessing, or rather the students are assessing. And the idea is that they do self-assessment from beginning to mastery, and we're working through the key stages. So we would support them, so they would have the ability to assess their own work, but also have peer assessment and mentor tutor assessment. And what we're hoping that, I mean, what I feel quite strongly about is that these key stages represent ages, but not everybody's ready at a particular stage. At the end of Key Stage 1, are you ready? Just because, or but particularly actually Key Stage 2, just because you're 10 or 11, does that mean that you're ready? Right, we're on to Key Stage 3, done the last stage. And so what we're trying to do is create an option where within each key stage, you're again going from beginning to mastery, but you can work at your own time. So you don't have to, not everyone has to be at the same level on everything. And that maybe some people are better at other things, and that's what we're trying to adopt, a model where you don't all have to be brilliant at everything, and that as a society we need a much more varied collection of skills, and we don't all need the same skills, this one size fits all. I mean, it's wonderful to try and make it fairer and make it standardized, but also at the same time, do we want everyone to be the same? We live in communities where we need hundreds of different skills, and in real life, after school, all those skills that like aren't valued at school, you know, what if you're a brilliant people person? What if you're brilliant at teamwork and that's not valued at school, and you come out of school thinking that you're a failure? And yet that's what jobs, like there's hundreds of jobs out there that want that type of skill. And it's the same with creative thinking or problem solving, or maybe your presentation skills are incredible. You might not be able to sit exams and remember things that well, but your presentation is beautiful. That might work really well in a lot of jobs. And so we're trying to make a much broader range of possibility for success, and that it's not so much about giving a student a grade and saying, well, yeah, you're a winner and you're a failure. It's like, well, what are you good at and what can we support you with? And it's also actually, I'll just go back one session, because what we're also looking at is the idea that in the future, I don't think sitting down and writing a paper for an exam is going to be the future. It's much more likely from all the research that I'm doing and the people that I'm collaborating, or the companies that we're collaborating with, there's a lot of talk about assessment going online. It's going to take a while, but this is what we're preparing for, this vision of education for the future. So if assessment goes online for things like maths and science, which is so easy to actually assess with an algorithm, if you've got a yes/no answer, then why is it not already being assessed online? And if assessment goes online, it could be much closer to a kind of music grade exam, where you could do level 1. You could even split maths up and do level 1 geometry and level 4 arithmetic, and you can have it then that all of universities require a level 4. You could do it with the key stages, so everyone requires a level 4 mathematics then to get into uni or to get certain things. That's fair enough. So then everyone can be working online to get those things. It's like driving. You don't want people to drive on the road unless they've done a test. So there are things and there are criteria, and testing is important. But if we do it online, and that you can fail it and you can just take it again, and you can take it anytime when you're ready, so you can work with your tutors and say, well, do you think I'm ready to sit this exam? It's like, yeah, why didn't you have a go sit it? And if you fail it, you can always, retake it. It's not such a big deal. Then I think we can take the rest of the curriculum that's maybe harder to assess in these yes or no or formulated exams. Those, do we really need that type of exam, that type of assessment for those subjects? So what we're suggesting is, as a DT teacher, this is what I've been teaching within the state system. So we've been teaching at GCSE, this is the kind of portfolio that, these are just a few pages. I mean, this is a massive portfolio, and this is a Templar. These sheets are Templars from the OCR GCSE, so they're quite high standard. But for example, with a portfolio, you're able to show ideation, teamwork, problem solving, self-management. You can embed videos, you can embed photographs, audio. There's just there's so much. You could film. You could put in teamwork from photographs, or you could film a group working with teamwork, or you can film a whole play. Or there's just a lot of possibility with portfolios. And you could, when you eventually go to university or to a job, then you would be able to say, here is my portfolio. It has more value because you can see what work I've done, as well as, and I sat online and I've got grade 5 maths online, and I've got you can give all your grades alongside but what's really of value is look at all this work I've done, look at my presentation skills, or look at my teamwork, and this is what my peers have said about me. Here's some quotes that I made about the work I did, and then some self-evaluation. Here's some peer assessment quotes, and here's my mentor, my tutor assessment quotes. Just to have a quick look to explain a bit more clearly about how our timetable works, we have 5 projects. The idea is that you do a 12-week project in the first semester, and it's a 16-week, it's a 16-week project in the second semester. And those 2 projects give you a DVQ at the end. So you have, at the end of a year, you would have 5 DVQs, 1 in each of our different pathways. And in our middle school, we're running from age 10 to 14. And the idea is that if you do your first year, then you can get your bronze DVQs, and then you would get the second year, you'd get your silver DVQs, then your gold. And then at the end of middle school, you would be able to get your platinum DVQs. And then you'd move on to high school, and you'd start high school bronze all the way up to your platinum high school DVQs. And you would then be able to, with your platinum ones, you'd be able to get that externally accredited, get an NFT, show that you've got your portfolio, and then use that to get to universities and or jobs, hopefully, because we're actually really working on building the entrepreneurs and also building connections with local businesses. And by the time you're in high school, with us, the idea is that you could have set up your own company or been working as an apprenticeship within a company already. So I'm going to give you an example now. I don't know whether if anyone has any questions, whether Helen wants to come in at this point before I go into a bit more detail on one of the projects. Any questions? We could pop in.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm absolutely happy. Thank you, Rosina. If anybody would like to ask any questions now, I think that would be a good idea. Would anybody like to ask any questions? Maria, are there any schools in London? Says Maria.
Oh, no, we're currently piloting in Bali. We haven't built our school yet in terms of the full school in the UK. We're starting with pilots, so we've got about 5 different pilots in pipeline. One possibly in New York. There's a couple we're looking in Bristol. We're starting a pilot in May, and the view is that we can trial this. So we're just at the beginning. We are trialing it in lots of schools and in lots of different environments, and then we're in the process of building the school in Cambridge. So the school in Cambridge, which is going to be our first proper school, because the one in Bali is actually empathy school. So we're running our first big pilot there on their secondary. Zach, our co-founder, is heading up that project. So he's now the head of Empathy Secondary. But the one in Cambridge is the idea is that it's a research centre for research and development, and it's also a teacher training centre. So it'll be a secondary school running from age 10 to 18, and it's just a place that that can work alongside the university in terms of, because we've got quite a few members of the university that we're working in collaboration with on our advisory board, as well as I said before, we have a few Ofsted inspectors on our advisory boards. We've got an amazing group of people that are helping support us, and we're also working in collaboration with many amazing groups. And so we're not really working alone. The idea is that we work with lots of people, but yes, in terms of there isn't a school in London as yet, but let me know if you want to start trialing this project, because we're looking at doing 6-week, 8-week, 12-week and 16-week pilots. So
yeah, I just want to ask, this is Ishmael.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any plan to extend this to Africa?
There is. So there's the possibility, we're talking to a couple of schools in Kenya and in South Africa right now. I also have a few connections in Gabon. So where are you based?
Sierra Leone.
Ah, okay. Well,
Yeah,
if you know any schools in Sierra Leone, if you're working in a school, then
yeah. I have a charity school. I'll be interested. Who will be the contact person?
Yeah, you can contact me. I mean, it might not be possible to do it this exact moment, but it might be. Let me know if I will put my email. I don't know if Helen, you're able to share my email in the chat.
Yes, please.
That would be great.
Yes, I think so, Rosina. I will try and do that. And I can also see that Maria has said too that she'd like to become involved. And I know that Maria is extremely creative and loves all things creativity.
Wonderful. Yeah.
She'd be a great person to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it's the idea is, I mean, we're beginning and we're getting all the resources and starting all of this out now, but I mean, by next year we will certainly be, because we're already sort of flying, which is really exciting. But what was I going to say? Yes, my email is rosina@davincilifeskills.com. So you can also look on our website, which is davincilifeskills.com. We have our contact on there. So if you want to get in touch with me, that would be great. Any more questions? No, should I keep going? So this is an example of a personal exploration project. This is just the first few lessons of it. This is...
Sorry, Rosina.
Yes.
It's me. No.
Hi.
I had to come in a bit late. We were doing a technical rehearsal for the panel thing I'm on Thursday, you know, the books one. So yeah,
this is one of our wonderful advisors, a wonderful advisory board.
Oh yeah, a wonderful exhibit a wonderful advisor.
Who works with Ofsted and is helping support us make sure that...
No, correction. I was an HMI with Ofsted, yeah, and I left in 2014, thank goodness. But I am still, obviously, I'm working with yourselves. I'm very, very happy to support this. It's tremendous. It's a passion of mine that schooling should develop in this way. And you know, I've written about it in the book, and I've written about it anywhere I can in any articles I've written. So I'm really delighted that this is all coming to fruition. But can you just can we just go back to your timetable, Rosina, please? That one. And what I just wanted to know from you was why you picked those particular projects. You know, you picked the food project. The personal exploration obviously is great. Food, enterprise, production, and multiverse. So, for example, if you were convincing parents, you know, how would you, why is it those projects? You know, why is the focus on there rather than, I don't know, creative media, music, I don't know, it's something else, you know, STEM, you know, looking at science, technology, whatever. I'm just giving some examples there.
Yeah.
So what was the thinking behind those specific projects?
It's a good question. It all kind of came together looking through the curriculum and looking at all the kinds of things. I mean, one, enterprise is very close to kind of DT, and that's one of the things that I've been teaching, and realized that really covers so much of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And it incorporates science and maths and art and design, but also geography, history, and English in terms of English language and presentation. There's, as well as practical skills. So enterprise is kind of business studies, geography, but also I was also teaching physics, and we were looking at material properties, and then you've got chemistry that's already involved in that. And it's just endless amount of subjects that you could bring into that and expand in enterprise. And then when Zach's specialization is in games, and again he felt the same way, that once you started expanding that out, that just covered so many things, because you're looking at biodiversity, and you're looking at philosophy and religion and societies, and again geography. So when you start world building, and then you've got to look at, well, what are worlds? what are societies? And there's so much that comes into that. And in terms of our history, and then also stories. So then it's the English language and media and film. You know, there's so much in storytelling.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
And then food, it was just like, well, that was obvious because we were looking at sustainability, and it was the real desire to bring food as part of a community thing. So it's the idea of bringing food and education as a kind of hub for a community space. And food, really, the more we work on our food projects, the more they really embed science and mathematics, was what we're finding. So they've got a wonderful blend, food projects, between the practical, actually digging the soil, planting seeds, harvesting food, growing food, serving food, and that customer service, but also understanding quantities, you know, understanding statistics when you're doing surveys, understanding scale. There's just so much actual, and then also just the biology and chemistry involved in food is massive. World history, just the world politics. It's a, you know, it's just as we built it up, we realized that these were the things that came out on top.
No, it sounds it's good. I mean, I'm not questioning. I think the rationale you're giving is really good in those cases. It was just that whether you're omitting you know, again, if you come back to trying to have a bit more of a broader curriculum for children, which I think this is, you know, the underpinning principles of it gives them a broad curriculum and actually gets them to develop thinking skills, which I think is key to learning, which at the moment in the knowledge-led curriculum traditionally in schools, they're not developing those skills. So I'm all for this. I just wondered if maybe you needed you know, you needed another option in there, which was more focused around the creative media, music, that kind of area.
Well,
production is production that?
Yeah, well, production's the wonderful blend. So that's really, when I think of production, I think of Leonardo. So I think of how the arts and sciences can blend. So for example, if you think about the Science Museum, how does a science museum go about teaching science? Well, they've designed a museum full of interactive sculptures and multi-sensory experience. When you go, you get to press buttons and move things and understand mechanics, and or go into a room which feels like the womb, and you hear the sound of the womb, of the heartbeat, and you're like, wow, I'm completely immersed in this space. So production is, for me, is that proper blend of the sciences and the arts. So anything that you feel like I can't, how do I fit that into the curriculum? We can do a project on it. We can, with production, we can make a documentary on it. We could make a book. We can do an exhibition.
No, I get that. And I'm assuming, so maybe I, you know, just because it's just so interesting for me, so forgive me for hogging this. Just the underpinning skills that they will need for this, for example, the digital skills, you know, the English skills, the science skills, the math skills, etc., that they will learn in week one, term one.
No, we're learning those right the way through. So the idea is that we have, each project's really around, it comes to around 3 hours a day, because we have a project on each day of the week. And it's we have other things within our curriculum that we're offering. So we have an hour of theory, really. It's project theory and project applied. So it depends on what we're doing and what stage we're at the project. But some part of the project will be theory, and that's happening all the time through it. So what skills do we need for the applied learning that we're going to do? So if we're doing a customer survey, for example, which we're doing right now in Bali, the students are building a cafe for the parents. And so they're doing a customer survey. They've written a survey on SurveyMonkey. They've looked at how you do questioning. So this is all, how does one write a survey that gets the right kind of answers, that's not got bias in it, that's not asking 2 questions at once, things like this. So they're learning a lot of English literacy skills, I mean, not English language skills, and then they will be learning math skills, because they've got to analyze the data. But then we're looking at statistics, and what are percentages, what are fractions, how do we display data, what's the best way? Do we display it in a graph, you know, a pie chart? What? And the point is it's data they've collected. So that's what's exciting, because it actually is relevant, rather than it being, well, Claire had 2 apples and George had four oranges. It's much more like, well, what did the parents say? Do they want to have a gluten-free cafe or an organic cafe? How many people are gluten-free? That you know, what percentage are gluten-free? How much percentage do we need to offer when we're deciding on our menu? Things like that, that's actually relevant data that they actually need.
That's absolutely right. And I saw a marvelous assignment just like that in Dubai when I was out there when working with the schools out there, and they're doing the International Baccalaureate. I think I may mention that to you. And the assignment they had was precisely that. It was using their business skills, their DT skills, their math skills, their English skills, because they had to redesign the cafe, the actual cafe of the school. They had to redesign it. They had to work out the costings. They had to work out what it was going to look like in terms of design and technology. They had to work out the cost of the workers plus their own cost as a project manager. They had to show value for money, the 2 criteria, value for money, design, and, you know, fit for purpose, customer satisfaction, all of that. And then the assessment criteria was sculpted around that, you know, was shaped around that. So it was brilliant. I saw the assignments. They were fabulous, you know, and so creative, and involved independent thinking and collaborative thinking as well. So yeah, absolutely spot on. I'm all for it. I'm for it.
Thank you.
I'll let you get on, Rosina. Sorry, forgive me everybody for having hogged this so long.
Don't worry, it's great. It's a great discussion. And in fact, actually, one of the things that I have been questioning, because I've been speaking to a lot of mathematicians in all of this, and one of the questions that actually I was faced with, well, sometimes maths isn't about the statistics and graphs and all of these type of things. What about just the beauty of numbers, the beauty of pattern? And for me, that's an obvious answer.
Yeah.
It might be a question that some people, what about sequences? And for me, that's like, well, if you look at Leonardo, it's all about art. So we can have a whole exhibition on beauty, for example. It's the first thing that occurs to me when you think about the beauty of maths. Maths is beautiful, pure maths is beautiful, pattern is beautiful, it's in everywhere, it's in nature. If you look at the Fibonacci sequence, if you look at tessellation, it's everywhere around us. We could do a beautiful art and maths piece on the beauty of things like that, so of sequences. So I think,
and you can do something on religion and art and maths, because in the Muslim religion, in Islam, of course, they don't use pictures, but they use geometry. Geometric patterns are everywhere in the mosques and everywhere, when you look at those patterns. So absolutely spot on. That's the way you would describe it. And I always remember sitting in a maths lesson in a school where the teacher actually brought that in, and she actually showed them these geometric patterns because she was trying to make it come alive for them, geometry, rather than let's look at geometry and let's look at these examples and work them out on that worksheet. So she actually was bringing it alive. The kids were really fascinated because they were then colouring them in. So they're bringing art into the maths lesson, which was fabulous,
Exactly. So you could design your own tiles.
Exactly. That's where
let's tile a whole wall of the school.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it a bit more organic. It's just thinking like that. It's just thinking in a project-based mind. It's very easy to, I think. And I know that there's also been the worry that you levering in things into the curriculum, but I don't think that's the case. I think if you think about it as projects and why are we learning it? If it can't be a part of a project, then why are we teaching it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if it doesn't have any life application, any meaning in life, then as a project, then why are we teaching it in school? Would be my answer. But is there any other questions? Thanks, Nina.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll continue on and just shout out. I'm happy for if anyone wants to.
Raised her hand. Molly, would you like to speak?
Hi.
Hi, Molly.
Hey, I'm just thinking, like everything so far that Rosina has been saying, I'm like, this is very much, I don't know, it just ties in with everything I've ever imagined I'd want to do, like homeschooling my future babies. I just want to hear if she has anything to say about that, how she sees all of this, being a thing with homeschooling.
Yes.
Molly's future babies.
We are definitely considering homeschooling. So one of the visions that one of the pilots we're working with is a homeschooling group right now. So the one in Bristol is a homeschooling group. We've also been in discussion with Galileo that are producing a whole plethora of online learning opportunities for homeschool education globally. And so yeah, we're in the discussion phase with them at the minute about possibly providing resources and teacher training, and also we've designed the curriculum so we have a project on each day of the week, and the idea is that if you are homeschooled, you could come in 1, 2, 3 or 4 days. The one that's hardest to do with that is food, because our food projects run right the way through the week, because what certainly for the school that we're building, the idea is that the students are producing the school lunches, so that's where it's harder. But the other projects could definitely be done. We also want to open at weekends and make the school available to all students, because the problem we have at the minute is that we can't do this in the state system to be this radical, so we're having to build a private school or an independent school. The hope is that we can get, if I could get 100% bursaries, I will. But we really want to get as many bursaries as possible. But so we can get as many people in this for free. But the idea is to get it out and actually affect systemic change and get it into state schools and get our pilots into state schools and collaborate with as many schools generally as possible. But with the home ed, also weekends, we're going to run our projects at weekends as well. So try and make it really open to as many people as possible. If that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, it does. Thank you. I think there's enough time for it to get, you know, refined while the babies make their debut. And also, which schools in South Africa are you in communication with? Do you remember?
Not yet, no, but I will, if if you remember me, I will keep you informed definitely about where we're working in South Africa.
All right, thank you very much. Okay,
that's a pleasure.
Thank you, Molly, for your questions, and
thank you.
To say to everybody, thank you, Rosina, for your answers, but also I've put lots of things in the chat. If you look in the chat, I've put a link to the Da Vinci Life Skills website. I've put Rosina's email address and lots of things about the Steve Sinnott Foundation, including our next webinar on the 23rd of March, and very importantly, our human rights project and about our charity gifts and so on. So please do all have a look at the chat. There's lots of really important links in there. So thank you. I think it's best now if we go back to Rosina, and I think if we ask Rosina to finish her presentation, and then we'll have some more questions at the end.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So getting on to, we were originally talking about the whole the project, one of the projects. So the real view on this one is encouraging. Originally this project actually started out as more of an enterprise project, but we realized that to scaffold students to create their own personalized projects, that this might be a good one for them to start with. So actually this then became the first PEP project where students were supported and scaffolded in how to build the structure of their project. So then after this, we can then slowly enable them to do it by themselves and come up with their own passion. So this one is about designing your own company, a logo, and then an advertising mailer. And the first two lessons are about finding that mission. So we usually start with questions. It's all sort of building block questions at the beginning of every lesson, and then we end with the sort of concluding questions to check learning. This one, I don't know if you all know, there's 6 R's of sustainability, but we're really trying to encourage all of the thinking in our school is all about inclusivity, ethics, and sustainability. So these are repair, reuse, refuse, and recycle, rethink, and reduce. This project has 3 parts to it. The first part is, we're calling them design briefs. So the first part is to create your company or organization, something that would make a difference in the world. So they have to come up with the company mission and to invent an appropriate name for that company. Then design a distinctive logo and define a brand and look at the importance of brands and logos and how they affect a company. And then to design an advertising mailer that you could send out to your customers or your clients, or to just to get an awareness and to spread your mission. So again, we're always starting with questions. Our first one was, can you identify a need in society, and what could you create to meet that need? So what kind of company organization could you create? And what we're doing with all of our projects, in terms of having PowerPoints and when we're presenting work like this, we really we're trying to use icons and have a visual language as well, because we've got, particularly right now in Bali, we have a lot of EAL, so non-English speaking students, and so we're trying to support them as well by making sure that we always have, for example, this is about group discussions or whether you should be writing this down. So not all schools have access to computers. We're trying to be able to refine our resources to meet, so we would make bespoke resources to meet different schools' criteria. So we have a whole set of questions and basically a questionnaire before we work on different pilot projects. And we need to make sure that it's a viable school or a viable group or organization that we're working with to be able to run a pilot with you. And our sort of minimum is that you have access to printer paper and pencils and colored pencils, and at least one computer, so at least the teacher can do online research, and supposedly a projector would be good, so you could project some of these images and project research onto the walls, even if the students are unable to get onto computers themselves and actually do research themselves. But we're really trying to push for students to do their own research. This is Kate Raworth's donut economics model. So we will encourage students to go out and look at different sort of things that would inspire them to think of ideas of, and what are the problems in the world. And this is one of them. So Kate Raworth has an amazing model here that she's created. And so you could then have a discussion with the students about things like ocean acidification, climate change, energy, water, what issues might there be around these things. And we've also got the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and what that's a chance for a good discussion on all of those. What we're really getting them to do, that activity here, is to research these. So with that, this is what this project, what this research we've gone into, is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So we're asking the students to choose 4 of them to really look at statistics and things that relate to that goal. And then with each of the goals that they choose, to then look at either local, to first look at local. We're really trying to make this bespoke and get students to connect with their local environment as well as the global. So if you go back to the idea of this biophilic education, the idea is, how does this affect me as a person, as a human being? How does this issue affect my local environment, my family, my local town, my country? How does this affect everyone globally? How does this affect other species, our species, the whole planet? And this is really how we're facing all of these questions. So when I'm also introducing, there's a company called the Global Goals Centre. They have lots of free resources and projects for schools. So that's another one that's worth going on. You might want to add that into the chat too. Global Goals Centre is a great organisation, as well as the Steve Sinnott. And there's also the United Nations website, so you can go and have a look there. They've got loads of information, statistics on there that they've reported. It's a great resource. And so these are some of the 4. So this is the idea of a teacher doing this research for the students. So this is what I'm showing you now. You could get the students to do their own. How does poverty affect an area where you live? In the UK, it would be, there's a lot of homelessness, and there are a lot of issues in the UK with poverty, but here's some statistics. I would always encourage students to show where their statistics are coming from, because again, there's an awful lot of information that you can get from anywhere. And what we're really trying to teach in critical thinking and how to research is understanding bias and understanding where facts or information comes from. So where's the source and what bias might they have is something that's really important to add within this. With this one, this is what I found, a local organisation. So there's a centre called 33 in Cambridge, and they support young people. So here is an example of a type of company that a student could design. What if we had a place where young people could go to talk about the issues around poverty and hunger? So if we had, we've got Sustainable Development Goal 2, how does hunger affect communities and individuals where you live? Again, the school I was working in recently, there were a lot of issues with hunger and poverty, and a lot of students didn't have the money for food. And when COVID hit, the first thing that we did was going out and giving food donations and having a food bank. And I'm sure that's the case in many countries too. So this is a chance for students to really look at what issues are going on, particularly starting locally and then branching out. This is a local, I'm in Cambridge, Norwich is quite nearby. This is an organisation. So the idea is you do the research, what are the issues locally, and then what can you find a company? So can you find a local organisation that's trying to solve this problem? Again, it doesn't always have to be local, but I think it's really important to start there and then branch out. So we have the Norwich Food Hub here. So we collect surplus food and redistribute it to help save food hunger and fight hunger, which is a really exciting project. And when we've run this project with students, this is one of the things that inspired one student that we had who wanted to have a van that went round and picked up food from restaurants, for example, and then took it round to homeless people and supported homeless shelters. This is all about inspiring ideas. So clean water, sanitation, there's so many issues. So it's like, how does water pollution affect your community or place you visited? So here I've just started to branch out and look more globally. So there's a lot of issues. I used to live in Bangalore in India, and when I was there, I experienced all sorts of issues with foam and detergents and sewage in the rivers and plastics in the rivers. I was also spent last year 6 months in Bali. Again, there's loads of issues with plastics in these countries, and you've got the issues with water drying up. So just going back to actually a local designer, this designer came from Ipswich, which again is quite close to Cambridge. He created the Lifesaver bottle, and I don't know if you can see me within your thing, but I actually have one here. I actually own a Lifesaver bottle, and I think it's really useful to have objects, and if there's been products that are designed, you might not always have them, but I have also things like, I have a box here, tissue box called the Naked Sprout, which is a company that we use to get toilet roll and tissues. It's all bamboo, so the tissues and the boxes are all made out of bamboo. It's really useful to bring this type of thing in to schools to show students these things are actually tangible. They can pass them around and have a look at it. We've got biodegradable straw company, Fiesta Green, things like that. What's amazing about this guy's company, just out of interest to show you, he's created this, you can basically put sewage into this Lifesaver bottle and you can drink the water that comes out of it. It's amazing. And he's used the big tank, his large tank, it shows here, it can hold up to, it can produce 2 million litres of clean water, which would provide a community of 100 people with clean drinking water for up to 18 years. And yes, it might be that students don't have the scientific technology to be able to develop a product like this, but they can have the ideas behind it and then look into the technology afterwards. Maybe they could, you know, by the time they get to high school, there might be more possibility to really look at the science of filtration and understand nanoparticles and how that might work. So again, there's huge amounts of science that can be embedded into projects. Another one that I really love showing is, well, I've got quite a few examples of students that have created projects while they were at school. And I think that's really exciting because, for example, Boyan Slat created the ocean cleanup. He started this project while at age 16 while at school. And I found that when I talk to students, this is what they get excited about, because it's suddenly like, actually, this makes it a bit more real. One, if it's a local issue, it helps bring context to it, but also, oh my gosh, somebody who's 16, that's not too far away from my age, they've actually created something, I could maybe do this. And it's like, yes, you could make a difference right now. You don't have to wait till you finish school, wait till you're an adult. You can make a difference now. And I think that's really important, to empower students, to let them know you can do this. Boyan Slat, even though I think there's been a lot of issues with his ocean cleanup model, but he's got loads and loads of iterations. So it's a good example of how he also did crowdfunding. So that's another thing that we can talk about. How do you actually raise money if you create this kind of company? How do you go about raising the money for it? He's now just worked out that maybe going around the oceans cleaning up plastics isn't the best option, that maybe stopping all the plastics going into the oceans is a good option. So he then has designed the interceptor, which is now in all the rivers. They did all these tests on all the different rivers and they found the top rivers that are pumping plastics into the sea. And that's why they started to tackle to get that plastic out of the river and recycle it and either burn it or bury it. It's going to click onto a film here because I like embedding films, because again, it's nice to wait if you have PowerPoints to break them up sometimes with films, if that's possible.
The ocean cleanup.
Okay, I'll move on from that. Then looking at responsible consumption, I think this is a really good one, because this is one that that all kids can deal with, because this is like, how much do you use? And I think particularly in the UK, with something like fashion, I found that's a really thing that students can connect with, is how much do I consume, because we live in such a consumer society. And looking at these pictures, for example, of the Ariel Sea, and how that's dried up over the years from the cotton industry. So when you buy all of those very cheap t-shirts or whatever it might be, there's articles from somewhere like Primark. What are the issues there? You know, something you might think, oh, it's organic cotton, and cotton's not bad, is it? And then it's like, well, possibly. So it's really looking at where the issues are in the world, and these shocking mountains of thrown away clothes, I think can have a huge impact. And again, these next two slides, brilliant films. The Economist has amazing resources, and on YouTube you can find their films. This one and the next one are brilliant on fashion and the issues with fast fashion. So
buying clothes has never been easier.
I won't go into them, but I found that students really respond well to this, because it's and lots of students actually now are upcycling clothes. Certainly my daughter, I've got a 17-year-old daughter, she buys all of her clothes from secondhand shops and from Depop, and they have a huge trade going on now in secondhand clothes. Another one with plastic pollution in fashion, and ideas from that. And what's great too about these particular videos from The Economist is that they show solutions. So they show companies that are trying to make a difference at the end of them. So it's not just these are a load of problems, it's also this is what's being done to solve those problems. And that's, I think, really, really important, that the message isn't always negative, because it can get very negative in schools. And I think it's about empowering people. I think in education, it's like, yeah, look at Patagonia, they're doing an amazing job. They're not saying just buy all of our jackets. They're saying, don't buy this jacket. If you don't need a jacket, don't buy one, which is an amazing thing to put on as a slogan. And they've got right up there the 6 R's of sustainability. Well, most of them: reduce, reduce. We make our gear to last, so you don't need to buy loads of jackets. You're just going to buy the one, and we'll repair it for you. And if you don't want it, we'll help you sell it or pass it on, and we'll help you recycle it at the end of its life. These are all things that can really inspire students to think about how they might design a company or design products as they go into the future. Avani, another guy in Bali, he's created a product called I'm Not Plastic. And these plastic products, they look plastic, but they're actually made from 100% biodegradable and compostable. It's like a cellulose. And when you put it into boiling water, it dissolves and you can actually drink that water. It's completely harmless. And so for single-use plastics, it's just an amazing invention. another one that's with young people, these two at Green School Bali, age 10 and 12, Isabel and Melati, they designed this company, and it was a wonderful story because they started out that age, and they went to the Prime Minister, well, they tried to get to see the Prime Minister in Bali, and they were like, what do we need to get to the Prime Minister? What do we need to change the law and to have no more plastic bags in Bali? And they were like, oh no, you need hundreds of thousands of signatures. I can't remember the exact amount of signatures, but it was, you need to go and get that many signatures, you need to get a petition together. They did it. They went to the airport, they got all the signatures they needed. They just sat there, got all of the signatures, went back, and the Prime Minister had to actually then see them, and they were able to make systemic change. They made change. The government changed their policy on plastic bags, and then they went on to build, they've now left school, they went on to build a global company called Bye Bye Plastic Bags, and that's such an inspiring story. And they have huge, and what's great too is that they have youth groups that students could actually join now. So they do beach cleaning, they run all sorts of projects with students. So not only is that an inspiring story, but students within your school right now could join that mission. So when you come back to facing your piece of paper in front of you, this hopefully will then you'll have way more ideas. So can you identify a need in society, and what could you create to meet that need? So that you could work together to do this, or you can get students to do it by themselves to create a spider diagram. So quite often I do this, when I do it on a board, and I write it out and get them to come up with ideas, and then we do it as a group, and then I get them to do it by themselves. I find that easier. And once they've done it by themselves and they have that on the paper, it's then I then get them to highlight whatever they find most interesting. So which areas do you think, oh, actually that sounds interesting to me? So I've just highlighted 3 here. So climate change, deforestation, and renewable energies. So the activity, this is a fast activity. Choose an issue that you would like to tackle, create a company organization that would make a difference in the world or to your community. So this is them just brainstorming, and write down your company's or organization's purpose or mission. So what mission do you really want to tackle? Now you've done that kind of brainstorming. And it's always important to then use your research. What's the importance of research? Your mind maps, the 6 R's of sustainability, and all the things, all the information you've gathered, use that to help you. So again, choosing the name of your company, mind maps I find is the best way personally for ideation, but you might have other ways, but I find just brainstorming out ideas and then refining those down is a really helpful way of looking at it. So this was an example of how I went through. Water shortage, one I chose, poor infrastructure, wells, boreholes, water fountains, a charity that installs drinking water taps and water fountains for local communities. What's a good name that I could come up with? Tried 4, water for all, drink, tap it, taps for you, chose tap it, quick idea, maybe tap it will work. And then this would be the end of the lesson. Can you remember? So this is a double lesson, and you could expand this into a few weeks. This could be quick or massive. So it depends on whether you're doing a quick project or whether you're doing, this could be 8 weeks or it can be 16 weeks and really expanded. So that's the end of a project. What time is it? Whether I go on to the next one. I can just very quickly, if you like. I don't know if there's any questions at the end of that, and whether you'd want me to go on to the, just show you.
Let's have a quick moment for questions, Rosina. Yes. I think that's a good idea. Good. And then maybe 10 minutes on the next one. It'd be a good idea if we could finish about 6:30, I think.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anybody got any questions for Rosina at the moment? I'm just really inspired to see those children, young children who've had those fantastic ideas.
Well, yeah, that's the idea, is to get, it's about empowerment, isn't it? When you think, actually, what could I do? I do something, and And my experience of teaching this project is, it's so exciting, because kids are like, oh, actually I could design a project where we could do this and we could do, and they go really enthusiastic about what they can do. And even if it's just ideas and they never do it, it's really exciting.
It's absolutely quite amazing. I would echo what Helen said there. You know, it's just it's amazing when you provide children. I mean, the weirdest part of this is that those two girls in Bali, for example, they've not necessarily got it from an environment within a school, you know, their ideas, they've got it from somewhere. And I imagine, knowing Bali and having been there and having walked along Jumeirah Beach and seen all the plastic, the sea of plastic, they've got it from their natural environment. But what I find interesting is how many of our children sitting in schools are inspired to do something as creative as that from the environment outside school. And I wonder if there's something to be said now for schools trying to here, you know, actually get children to go out more. I know there is a bit of a thrust with primary schools doing nature, you know, going out and being amongst nature, but I think it's more important for secondary school children to be doing it, to go out and connect with the local community and to do things like litter pickups, because I'm appalled, you know, whereas you've got those two kids there producing something to get rid of it all. Where I live, there's a common just across the road, and I've seen children deliberately dropping bottles and litter. And when I challenged one child and said, you know, pick it up, there's a bin over there, they've said, oh, I don't need to. Why should I? Someone comes along and does it. And they're right. You know, people do come along and do it every morning. I've just noticed, you know. But then I was interested that the other day I met a group of kids outside Sainsbury's, and they were just school kids who congregated after school. And the same thing happened. One child put a plastic, whatever it was, on a bench. And I looked at her and I said, don't you think there's a bin nearby you could put it in? She looked really ashamed. And then she actually said, yes, I was going to take it away. So she was like, you know, she was ashamed. But what I'm saying is the instinct of children generally now is to throw it down on the floor. And that is such a contrast to what you've just shown there. So I think there's something there, Rosina, about schools trying to create an environment, you know, where you are encouraging children all the time to think about their natural environment out there. And the problem we have with the curriculum now in schools, I found this as a principal when I was, you know, principal of a school, that the curriculum we have now is so devoid of anything to do with the real world. It is so artificial as a curriculum that children come to school, they learn these bits of knowledge, but then how they connect it with the outside world is beyond me. And this is what they need really to make those connections. You know, they really, I mean, I was just looking at your one where you were looking at the, oh gosh, the recyclable one, sustainable, all of that. And I've sat in geography lessons where they do look at that, but they touch the surface and what they could do with all these resources. In fact, I'm going to, a school I'm working with, I am going to suggest they use these, because and possibly put the head of department in touch with you, Rosina, because
that'd be great.
I think, you know, I know he's passionate, and I'm going, you know, I'll talk to you about it afterwards, yeah. You know, it's, about how to, but that's the way to do it, isn't it? To get schools interested in this kind of area, because it is on the curriculum in geography, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
in PT as well, and it's in loads of subjects. Sustainability is in, and again with the IB, I think is amazing, and that's the IB has sort of pushed this more in the sense that community service is one big part of it. But exactly. where's the idea of community service gone? And I found my daughter went for 2 years to an IB school when we lived in India, and it was great, but I did find that the idea that that community service is meant to be 1/4 of the curriculum, it didn't end up, and I think that's probably true in quite a lot, that it always goes back to, well, actually it's mainly academic and then a little bit of community service. I mean, at least they're doing something.
Tagged on, yeah, exactly. Yeah, or if they're doing the DFE, some schools exactly. Do the Duke of Edinburgh's award, yeah. And you know, my daughter did that, but it is always an add-on, and it's always something that's not integrated, and that's what I would like to see in schools, something that's actually integrated properly in connect the real world with the school world. That's the bit I think we're missing completely in this society, which is sad, you know. I've done my little soapbox bit. I'll get off again.
No, I agree, and that's what I was talking about. That's where the research is. It's in contextual learning, and then you're going to remember the stuff.
Exactly. Relevance makes it memorable.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We have some other questions here, which I'm going to ask Rosina now, which are in the chat. And then I think as we're getting towards 6:30,
Yes.
I think we should just finish after we've had these questions rather than looking at another project, though fascinating that would be.
No, that's fine. It's a lot of information that we've already gone through.
They're also really important, aren't they? So I've got a question. This is a great project. What were or are the challenges that one will expect to face? That would be, I presume, in implementing the project or a project. And also part B of the question is, I'm also tempted to ask if you have a plan to extend it to Africa and where, because although that question was answered, at least in part before, the person asking the question had a poor signal at the time. But first of all, Rosina, what are the challenges that one would expect to face?
Well, I think actually the biggest challenges that I've faced are not having not for the access to the internet for students to do their own research within schools. Is resources, really, I think. So depending on the school you're at, some schools have amazing resources, or sometimes every student has their ability to have a computer, or they have their own computer, or they're able to use their phone, and they've got access to printers, and they can do color printing and all sorts, so you can produce amazing looking projects. And in other schools you might just have some printer paper and a pencil, and I think that's the challenge. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that our projects can be done with a range of resources. I think that's probably, and also then as Mina suggested, getting out into the community. There's always, do you have a school minibus? How far can you travel? I think it's really important for students to get out into their community and to see what's going on, to go visit local farms, to go visit local companies, to really be involved in, to go meet the local council and find out what projects they're involved with, and see, can we get involved with things that are going on locally, and that whole idea of community service. But there is issues, obviously, because then you've got health and safety issues, you've got child protection and all of that side of it. But it's not impossible. Schools do trips. But yeah, those are the areas I think that are probably...
Because unfortunately the COVID pandemic stopped all that sort of thing for the last 2 years, hasn't it? But hopefully we're getting back, and I have heard of some schools who are starting to do trips again and who are starting to go back out into the community again. So that's all good. And then the part B of the question was about Africa. So do you plan to extend it to Africa? And if so, where in Africa?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that again. Yes. And we're looking, we have links at the minute with, well, possibly now Sierra Leone, because we've just met somebody that's interested there, but with Kenya and South Africa at the moment, and possibly Gabon. I have a few links of people that I'm talking to, collaborations that we're beginning to build. But again, we're early stages with that. We've got to work out quite carefully which projects that we do, so we don't want to overstretch. We want to make sure that we build this in a solid way, and we've got one project or one pilot school already in Bali that's running our curriculum in full. And we have the project in Bristol, which is the Homo group, and they're starting to run a pilot in April actually. And then we have one that we're talking to currently, we're just in negotiation with in New York, and we've got a few others dotted around the world that we're also talking to, and possibly more in the UK. So yeah, there's lots happening, but we don't want to overstretch at this stage. But definitely interested in, and get in touch if you do have a school and that you're interested, or a Homo group that you're really interested in working with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rosina. So last chance for any final questions for people to either put their hand up or write into the chat. And also, just to say, Rosina, there's been some really positive comments in the chat, which you probably haven't had time to read, because I know you've been very busy presenting, but for example, Maria just said as well that she was very inspired, especially by the work of the young people in those projects and so on. So really,
I'll stop sharing. See you back. Yes, I haven't seen any of the chat, so hopefully I'll be able to read some of it later if you've saved the chat. But
yeah, we will indeed. And also, in terms of Anne will probably email out all those links to people in the next couple of days, and I'll make sure those other links that we've talked about during the course of today's webinar, like the Global Goals Centre, that goes into those links as well, so that everybody's got those links.
wonderful.
So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you so much, Rosina, for your absolutely stunning presentation. You've given us all so much food for thought now. We're going to go away and we're going to think of all sorts of things. I think that's the thing. It's really inspirational. Yeah, there's Maria saying, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much. Thanks for coming and listening to me. And I think collaboration is the way forward. So the only way we're going to make this kind of change is to do it together. We're certainly not the only people doing this. There are lots of people making amazing differences. And I think the message is the future is really bright. It may seem terrifying, and we may be facing wars and all sorts of, and climate change and mental health issues, but the future, I think, is bright. The potential for change, it's just, this is a difficult moment of change, and the future is going to be amazing. And we just got to inspire children to think that they can make that amazing difference, is what I would say. So thanks all for joining me, and let's do it together.
Thank you, Rosina. Fabulous presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Really enjoyed it.
The slogan is collaboration, not competition. There you go. That's
yes.
Slogan.
Try telling Russia that.
Slogans are important. This is what I was going to go on and tell you. So branding, slogans.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Please join us soon. Our next webinar is on the Alexander technique, which is all about good posture, which is very important. Well-being and making you feel healthy. So on a completely different topic.
Lovely.
Alexander technique.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you. And
thank you, Rosina. Bye.
Rosina, I'll talk to you on Saturday.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mina.
Okay. See
Thanks,
you
Maria,
then.
Molly,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.